when they weren't in alignment. So for me, I'm very, that I grew up on liberation, that word was something that we were familiar with as Tamil peoples from a young age, but what I wanted was a different standard of liberation than what the rebel group that represented us was embodying, and what that love. And then we also had gang violence as well. So it's, there was so many different layers of violence, when a community is contending with poverty, when there is an economic exploitative situation, when there's militarism, alternative economies will emerge as well. And in order to defend those economies, often people are armed. And so I think that really shrunk the space for discourse. It really shrunk the space for our communities to be able to be open. We had to remain covert and discreet. And so, the privilege of being able to be in the diaspora gave me a little bit of spaciousness to own my sexuality without my life being threatened at the same level as our trans and queer people in Alongai. But now it's been 10 years since the war ended. The war ended in 2009. We have our first Jaffna trans group in the north and east of Sri Lanka. So it's very much a decolonial process of reclaiming the ways in which we related as a community to gender before colonization. And it is intense because most people within our communities really are at the nicest uncomfortable with me being open about my sexuality, about my gender variance. I say in Tamil Vityasam, which means different. I think colonization, militarization, like the layers, economic exploitation, all the different layers that our communities have gone through has forced people to have to fit within some really narrow boxes. And at the same time, I do think we are a nature-based community. We are not that far away from our nature-based rituals and a nature-based way of being. I think if we were to, one thing I think about being from a war-affected community was that the same kind of capitalist development wasn't able to happen on our lands. And so, many of our communities are of rural areas, and, it's still very exploitative. Rural people go through a lot of economic exploitation, and are faced with their dignity being threatened on so many different levels.
Chairman Fred was trying to connect all the various poor communities when they took him out,
Yeah, absolutely. And also the way in which, like in rural communities, we also have less access to news, information, the ways in which people are able to come in with a little bit of money and easily manipulate a situation. All of those dynamics are there. So I would say, yes, it's very difficult. And I think there are things that are very magical and amazing about our communities. And I do also think that there are people within our communities who really understand and feel vibration. And I think because of the hardships that so many people within our communities have endured, there is also the folks who are seeking freedom and integrity have a really deep, nuanced, sharp perspective about that. And I think there's so much potential within our communities to be able to forge a liberatory path forward. But no, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy also, like, being raised by like a village amma in like, the US. Like my mom, I wasn't allowed to wear like skirts above my knee or shave my legs or wear makeup. And like she would get mad at me for wanting name brand clothes. And I wanted Guess jeans so bad. That was what was like popular when I was young. And that she made me wear the same clothes to school with no uniform every day. And I was just, everybody just made so much fun of me and bullied me. And yeah, so I had both, the pressures of, within our community, people just not knowing what to do with somebody who is as different as me. And then also in school and society, people just like having no idea anything about our culture. And during that era, it was horrible. I was, they just didn't know anything about our peoples. And, at TV at that time, we all were watching the same TV shows, the same TV channels. So we were all like, subject to the same racist, white supremacist narratives all the time, and everybody having to interact with them. So, when Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom came out, I was like chased around the playground. People were trying to take my heart out of me and tell me I ate monkey brains. And then, I was in solidarity with Ethiopians like from third grade because I was, called starving Ethiopian, and I was just like,
kids are the worst.
Yeah, it was
not kids, their parents.
And society and the white supremacists,
Well, when I fix my time machine, we're gonna go back there and we're gonna educate and edify.
Absolutely. And I'll be looking out for you too. Thank you. So we just wanted to, give you a little bit of glimpse into our lives and perspective. And we would love to hear some questions from y'all in the audience. And then we're gonna close it out with a writing exercise too. So if y'all want to get your writing utensils and your notepad, so we would love to hear if you have any questions from us. And while the questions are being gathered, one thing that we've been in conversation with Jay Mays, who facilitated earlier today, was about how do we, in times of duress, work across differences and build alliances. Because I think both of us came up during times and eras where we were very unique, and there wasn't necessarily within our context. It was hard to find people who had similar perspectives. And then especially when organizing for justice and dignity within Sri Lanka and fighting for that within that context, I had to build alliances sometimes with people who had very different politics with me, who had never met a queer person ever, or that was openly queer, I should say. And what the way in which we did it was we really grounded in values. At the end of the day, we believed in the dignity of every life. We often aligned around just violence is wrong. Also, when I had first started organizing with the SOS Collective, the Safe Outside the System Collective, out of the Audre Lorde Project, I had been a founding member in 2005. From 2010, we would build alliances with, we'd reach out, do outreach to churches, to businesses, to various different organizations. And I was often in conversation with people, pastors and ministers and folks who represented the church, who were like, I don't know, this is kind of against our religion. And I was like, but can we agree that violence against a trans, queer, lesbian, gay, bisexual, intersex person is wrong? And we would have to start there. We'd have to say, yes, we all agree that violence is wrong. So we get to the heart of our values, the heart of our integrity. And from there, really move our way out. And those are the ways in which we were able to shift space when there was very few allies and information about our experiences. So, Jen, do you want to talk a little bit about how you've worked across difference?
Well, I mean, I don't know. How do I do it? I don't know. I just do it. I believe, like I said earlier, I believe in connecting everybody. So I'm always figuring out, what the connection is, where the connection is, how can we connect your movement. And like I said, and I don't know if y'all could hear my lyrics earlier, but I was like, divided we're conquered, but together we're not lost. What's the method for together? Well, it won't exceed the cost. And that's for sure. Your fight should be my fight and mine yours, you know. Tolerating on pause, get the verbs off pause. And that's really what we got to do. We got to get it off pause. And this, quarantine isolation life really, it's a curse and it's a blessing in a way, because I mean, we've lost so many people unnecessarily, you know, um, and it's just changed like a lot of things. And so I believe that so many people have been forced to go inside themselves and really see like, yo, something's really just not right. And it was like a mass awakening. And I think that's what, because different movements are joining, and some people might be like, well, that's their fight, is their fight now, but eventually it's going to be all of our fight, so the only way through this is to unite movements, unite soul and spirit, and don't fall for the divisions that are being thrown out and exposed, because divided we're conquered. That's not just a saying, it's not just an idiom to throw out. Divided we are conquered, like, so yeah, connect, please connect, get involved. The Poor People's Campaign, different movements, like find somebody, get involved, get active,
Yeah.
The time is now, like Yalini was saying earlier, all hands on deck, all hands on deck. What are you doing? What are we doing? What can we do?
I think for a lot of our elders and ancestors who came before us, and also shout out to all the ancestors, transcestors who transitioned to the other realms during the AIDS epidemic, and thank you, Jendog, for also acknowledging the souls that are transitioning unjustly during this epidemic as well. But for our elders and ancestors who were fighting for freedom at the turn of the last century, they were fighting to even prove that colonization was wrong. So there was still, and even there were people who still didn't believe that slavery was wrong, so there was a need to prove, no, actually this was violence, and visibilize it, because the propaganda of white supremacy had been so strong that they were like, hey, you would have never known how to tell time. We brought you wristwatches. Like there was this kind of mentality. We're like, no, actually we looked at the sun and that's how we knew what time it was. We looked at the stars. That's how we knew. That was our GPS. That we looked at the shadows. But there was a huge fight to be able to identify the problem, to be able to analyze, identify, and be able to call out the problem. I think what this era and time is about is not just about identifying the problem, but really being able to envision the future. And so, with that in mind, we'd love to be able to take some time for y'all to reflect upon that. Um, we just want to brainstorm and take a moment to name what are the things that we would love to see in 100 years. And like what would a just society that affirmed dignity and that was liberatory, what would be in that just society? um Jendog, do you have any ideas of what you would like in that society? And if y'all could write in the chat and let us know, we would love to also hear your visions. um I definitely imagine us being able to communicate with parallel universes, um
Openly.
openly. Uh, I also believe in earlier what we said about the Council of Psychic Wisdom,
Hmm.
communication through plants, plant-based technology, technology that um, helps make a nature-based way of living more sustainable. Because these days, a lot of our nature-based communities are, what it used to take the labor of 8 people to sometimes be able to maintain a nature-based home. But with the current economies, people have to leave their homes, they have to leave their communities, they have to leave their villages, they have to leave the reservation, they have to leave, in order to be able to, um, the country. They have to leave in order to be able to have enough money to be able to sustain themselves.
Hmm.
So then you have 2 people at home, trying to get the water from the well, chop the wood, be able to, live in that nature-based way. So I'd love to see technology that makes the labor of a nature-based way of life more sustainable. What are other things that you
I don't
imagine?
know, but I don't want to wait 100 years for that. I want it like soon. So like y'all, let's actively work towards that. If you have some space, some yard space, like start a farm, even if you don't eat it all, grow it. You can donate it, find some people,
Or an herb garden on your windowsill?
yeah, and yeah, what I would like to see, in 100 hours or 100 days or 100 minutes. I want to see like us supporting us, community supporting community, that common unity, community, you know. Yeah, that's what I want to see.
I'd like us to really understand what it means to make amends, to be able to navigate conflict. Um,
And be accountable.
yeah, what, to truly make amends for the violence that has been committed by the state, by the various governments, by the wars. I would like to see actual amends and reparations for slavery, for genocide, for colonization, for us to be able to have the skills and understanding of what that means, for us to actually respond to war or a disaster by healing and centering healing. I would like to see when we go back to school, when I mean, here in New York, children are not actually physically going to school, but for those schools to actually also be sites of healing, a place for families, communities, not just children, but adults, to be able to process what it is that we've gone through. And I'd like that to be a model for how we move forward. Um, I'd like us to learn that it's more than just sorry. When we do something wrong, we got to make it right,
Mm.
you know? So, how do we start to exercise those muscles? How do we make things right?
One of the lessons that my mom gave me before she crossed over, that beautiful spirit, Mama Skywolf, she always said, whatever situation you enter, when you leave, make sure it's better than when you got there. Now, if we all just did that, yeah, I mean, that's a start. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's so much to do that we can do, that we should do, we must do, that we better do, you know?
So, I'd like for us to just take a moment and take a deep breath in, perhaps, uh, connect with the ground and the earth, if that is something that is available to you right now, regardless of whether you can touch the floor. I invite you to just feel the earth holding us, supporting us. And I invite you to take some deep breaths in, connecting with yourself internally. And as we take those deep breaths in and out, I invite you to fill your belly as you take a breath in. And as you exhale, pull the belly button into the spine and sit just a little bit taller if that is something that is available for your body today. To imagine creating spaciousness between the vertebrae and imagining energy from the top of your head to the sky. As you take those deep breaths in and out, I invite you to imagine infinite rays of energy radiating and extending before you and behind you. I'd like you to imagine that those rays of energy extending behind you are paths to the past. They are the messages and the legacies of those who have come before us, our transcestors, our ancestors. And I invite you to bring your attention to rays of energy and light extending, radiating from in front of you. And I'd like for you to imagine that those are rays into the future. Infinite possibilities and paths. I invite you to pick one of those paths, to pick a path towards justice and dignity for all, sovereignty and liberation. What is in that future? I invite you to be the architect, the designer of that future. And I invite you to start imagining the details of that future. How is it that everyone is able to be resourced, housed, nourished? How does technology work towards that triple bottom line of people, prosperity, and the planet? How will that vision have been expanded? What are the different technologies that will support us living interdependently, in harmony with each other and the earth? What are the technologies that ensure ethical governance? Imagining that, I invite you to take pen to paper or finger to device or computer and just start to write and imagine what it is that you want. What is that desire? We have to build the skills not only to demand reparations, not only to ensure that the systems that have harmed our communities are held accountable. Yes, that reconciliation and that truth is vital, and it is only one step on the path. The path that we are moving towards is our liberation our sovereignty, and our dignity. We need to build the skills to be able to govern ourselves. We need to build the skills to defend ourselves ethically. We need to build the skills to hold each other accountable. This is an abolitionist practice for us to be able to move beyond identifying the problem, but to also be able to carve paths towards the solutions, to be able to create transformative solutions and journeys with each other. So take a moment, continue to write, even as I am talking, about what that world is that you wish to see and what is needed for us to be able to achieve it and to be able to reach it. It means talking to strangers. It means being able to work across difference. It means being able to draw boundaries and recognize when something is harmful, and to also be able to break through with people. I'm a base builder, or I have a background in base building, and we were always taught to meet people where they were at, understand what it is that that concerns and moves people, what is their perspective, how is it that they are thinking, and then be able to provide the information that dispels the lies, the misinformation and falsehoods that intersect with people's experiences, that can sometimes lead people towards oppressive analyses. In sharing information, then we assess, does this person truly care about others? Do they have a sense of integrity? Or no matter how much information that is shared with them, do they really actually not care? Are they only interested in their own self and their own self-interest? Values were something that really guided our work. So, and that's how we were able to build relationships with churches that were still on a journey about whether or not, are still gaining information around what it meant to be trans and queer. That's how I was able to build relationships with organizers and activists who were against the war, but had very limited exposure and information around gender. Coming from communities that didn't have a lot of access to information, that was often manipulated by other forces. Sometimes like the only entities that were present during the worst times of the wars were evangelical churches. And there was a deep appreciation for people who were willing to risk their lives in war zones in order to be able to be present. And it was hard to challenge the missionary nature of some of that work because livelihood and survival was at stake. And so how did we work across those differences and build and move towards the world that we believed in? We got to the heart of people's integrity and got to the heart of people's values. And then we knew when there was somebody there was no way they were going to shift. There was no way that they were a contradiction, that they didn't actually really care, that they were only interested in their own self. And drew boundaries around that. And for people who were harmful, we called them out. And we made sure that they weren't continuing in that harm. Gave people the opportunity to be able to shift their behavior. But if they didn't, they no longer had access to people so they can continue harm. Mm-hmm. When we could, that wasn't always. So. Jinda, do you want to close us out?
Sure. I think we all need know what we need to do, and we know that there are things to be done. So, you know, make today the day that you figure out what can you do. What can you do moving forward to advance healing of this earth, of a person, of a movement, of people, yourself, you know. Um, yeah, what can you do? Um, Considering that so many people are on the front lines this weekend, um, being arrested, most likely unjustly. Maybe there's some bail, what is it? Like
Bail relief.
bail relief funds, you know, that you can get involved with. I don't know, just really like get into something, you know.
There's a great resource that was put together during the Ferguson uprisings by Ijera Stixon and some other organizers and activists, about 26 ways in which you can contribute without being in the streets. Everything from coordinating a safety team to there's so much organizing and coordination that happens that's not in the streets as well. So for those who don't have access right now, who need to really take care of their health, we really, really affirm taking care of your health first and foremost. There's so many ways to contribute. They may not be visible, they may not be in the media, but they are a way. So yes, there's donations, there's coordination, there's phone banking, there's getting out the message, there's one-on-ones, there's outreach, there's writing people, there's so many different ways in which folks can be active right now.
Yeah. How can they find the that from e-jurisdiction? How can they find that? The
resource,
26. Yeah,
the 26 ways. Let's see if I can find the site right now. It is. Why don't we put it? We'll put it in the chat. So I'm gonna send this to our computer right now and see if we can put it into the chat. And then if y'all want to stay in touch with us, we would love to hear your feedback and thoughts. You can reach us at
bookdreamwolf at gmail.com. That's bookdream, DREAM, wolf, WOLF, at gmail.com. And yeah, keep in touch with us, bring us to your institutions, or when outside is fixed, of course, but yeah, we're available, and we're here for you.
Email us to join our mailing list, please, because we don't believe that Facebook should have control of all of our contacts. So please email us to also be on our
mailing list. Our mailing list. We're not gonna like send out a whole bunch of stuff, but we'll just give you, some updates as we get into some things, and we do get into a bunch of different things. Yalini's a consultant with
Vision Change Win. So I do, do consulting with Vision Change Win. I'm part of launching an online studio for classes and facilitation called EM Studio. Online. Jendog, why don't you tell them about how people can get your album?
I have an independent project. It's on Bandcamp. I Love Jendog is the link for it. ILOVEJENDOG, and it's on Bandcamp right now. I'm very independent, so and I'm working on a new project. You heard 2 of the songs from that project. Well, you kind of heard them. The sound was kind of choppy chop, but yeah, so I have more stuff coming. And if you're a hip hop producer, you want, or a singer or something, you want to collaborate, I'm open to that too. Reach out to us. We're online, we're on the platforms. Add us, share us, like our stuff, or leave a comment. Engage with us, because we're here. We're for the people. Absolutely. you know
And as you can see, we are evolving and upping our technological game
hmm
even as you speak. So we are, so that we can be that much more available
and
for
accessible to these
for
new times.
virtual. Yeah, and we're so happy that so many more people have access, that these times have allowed for people who were not able to go to in-person events to be able to have access online. And we also recognize that there are a lot of people who don't have access at this time.
Oh, that reminds me. Can I cut you off for a sec?
Mm,
So you asked a question earlier about movements uniting. Like back then, there were no cell phones. There were no, even just being a kid, there were no cell phones. You didn't know where anybody was. You just had to, be
show up.
there, or yeah, show up. And how do we show up if the internet is shut down? What do we do? How do we find each other? How do we reach out? Do you have secret codes? Do you have a secret meeting place? I don't know, like if we lose contact, these are ways that movements back then, we didn't have to deal with. I mean, we didn't have um the
Reliance,
reliance on these
digital
devices. Yeah.
devices.
You know,
So we knew each other's addresses,
you
we
had to
knew
show
each
up.
other's telephone numbers,
hmm
we knew where to convene, we knew where to meet.
Like,
So
how many of y'all even have any phone numbers memorized? You know what I mean?
we
Like,
used to always have our telephone numbers
yeah.
memorized. Even now, I don't have numbers memorized like I used to.
But yeah, don't just be digital with your revolution. We need to get analog and
Align them all, right?
yeah, for
Align
sure.
align all technologies,
Align all movements.
off and online. Um, okay, y'all. So we want to be respectful of the next folks. We're happy to stay on and continue talking. So I'm just gonna check in with. It does seem like Kimmy is ready for us to sign
Yeah.
off, which is awesome.
So
So we're going to transition to the next event tonight. I think you're going to be listening to some really badass poetry.
yeah. One love, y'all. One love.
Blessings.
Keep in touch.